you ready?
Yeah, about 10 seconds.
About 10 seconds.
All right, I'm ready. Just let us know.
Okay. Good.
All right, folks, we're going to go ahead and bring the meeting of the Development and Planning Committee together for December 11th. Let the record reflect the starting time of 3:32. With regard to attendance of committee members, we did get a written request for an excuse of absence of Mr. Councilman Garza. All other committee members are here. That brings us to the meeting minutes of November 13th, 2024. Councilman Brown.
Motion to approve the minutes as is.
Motion on the table for the discussion. Seeing and hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same side. Motion carries. It takes us to public comment on agenda items, up to 3 minutes. If folks want to speak generally to any agenda item, we do have 2 resolutions as well as 2 ordinances on the docket today. Now would be the time. We simply would ask that you come to the table. We'll give you 3 minutes. Please state your first and last name for the record. And if you're interested, would you come on up? Yeah.
Good afternoon, council members. Some of you may already know who I am, but I am Jason Lachowski. I am the state advocacy analyst at AARP Michigan. I just wanted to really quickly come forward to just make a couple of clarifications to ensure council understands AARP's position. We support the proposed ordinance listed as E, dealing with accessory dwelling units. AARP supports the proposed changes as they are currently written. At the last meeting, there was discussion about an owner occupancy requirement. AARP just wants to ensure that should the council pursue an owner occupancy requirement, we would recommend that would be sufficed if the owner resides in either the principal residence or the ADU. And should the council deem that that's worthwhile to add to the proposal, AARP would continue to support it with that. So with that, I'll yield back any more of my time, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak.
All right, and we certainly appreciate you being here. Anybody else? Joan Nelson, come on up.
Thank you. My name is Joan Nelson, and thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. It's been a little over a year that roughly 40 of us came together to promote a bottom-up strategy of incremental development of shared use housing options. In the process, we've received welcome support from housing and neighborhood civic groups from all over town, including Allen Neighborhood Center, SWAG, Ingham County Land Bank, Ingham County Housing Trust Fund, Aspire, Spartan Housing Cooperative, Myriad Neighbors, small-scale developers, and AARP. In recent weeks, members of the network have been meeting with various council members and been pleased with the generally positive response to the shared use proposals that your planning department put together. An entirely reasonable concern has been raised in these meetings about the possibility that approval of things like rooming houses, boarding houses, ADUs, co-ops will overwhelm the building department staff, or the code compliance staff. That has not been the experience of several of the 22 cities that have made these changes recently. In fact, when we talk with officials from Grand Rapids, Traverse City, Ann Arbor, what they tell us is that in the several years since they passed approved a more inclusive zoning code, they've actually increased the cap because they want to encourage more of ADU developments, cooperative developments, and so on. The changes that occur in neighborhoods is not jarring, but rather presents as a gradual densification, a gradual thickening of the urban space. And the nice thing about incremental change is that it's incremental, right? The only comment I would make is that these changes, we believe, represent an approach that is different from large developers and centralized financial institutions determining what is built, how big, and where. The changes proposed by your planning department empower ordinary people, not high-powered developers, but ordinary people to be part of the solution to increasing housing. I'm talking about empowering, the woman on Allen Street who carves out a rentable unit in her home and opens a rooming house, or a small scale developer like Dave Newley, whom you've heard from in here, who over 12 years creates a cottage development, or the Southside homeowner that we talked to just recently who wants to build an ADU in his backyard and bring his mom to live closer. It includes emerging developers like those funded by the Housing Trust Fund recently to renovate the old Parks Furniture Building. Incremental, community-based, community-driven, bottom-up change begins with creating more inclusive zoning. Precisely the zoning that allows for diverse, more affordable housing options, precisely like those that have been proposed by your planning team. So we do hope that this body will, send that proposal to the full council for consideration today. And thank you again for the
Thank you.
opportunity to speak these multiple meetings.
Yeah, no, not a problem. We appreciate you being here.
Great.
All right. Anybody else? Come on up, Mr. Schertzing. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Eric Schertzing. I took care of Marquette Lansing. Just want to support Joan's reasonable comments on the inclusive zoning. I've been part of that 40 and attended a number of meetings. Of course, the work as county treasurer and at the land bank before the able taking over by Mr. Fox exposed me to a lot of this stuff. The neighborhood driven incremental development, I think, is a very powerful thing. I think this works. We worked hard to try to accomplish that, and that it would be very good for the city. The challenge will be helping people, find the resources, find the investment to be able to do some of those ADUs. That is, but I think those are exactly the type of residents in your community that you want to strengthen and help, and perhaps even attract more because of the inclusive zoning and housing opportunities in the city. So thank you for your time, your work on this, and your consideration today.
Appreciate it. Anybody else? All right, seeing none, let's go. Well, you're actually here
Want me to
for
wait for the agenda?
No, come on up, because we are at 5, discussion action item. This is a resolution objecting to the transfer of all unsold tax reverted properties from the Ingham County Treasurer to the City of Lansing. And obviously, let's not assume that everybody in the room understands the process. So if you want to talk about your role as the FGU, you want to talk about the auction process, you want to talk about the conveyance to the city and the objection and potential conveyance of land bank, we're all ears, and then we can actually take a look at the properties.
Yeah, thank you. That's exactly what I was planning to do. This happens only once a year, and I never assume that everybody remembers all of the details from year to year. It's hard enough to keep track of it when we're in the middle of it.
Right.
So for 2024, countywide, there were 45 properties foreclosed for tax purposes. That's a record low. We've got records going back to the current law to 2002 or 2005, something like that. It's by far the fewest. 35 of those properties were in the city of Lansing. The process has a step in it now that is finally functioning, which is designed to permit people who have lost property to foreclosure but have an interest from claiming proceeds as a result of an auction, of the auction sale. And that requires them to file a notice that they intend to seek such proceeds by July 1st after foreclosure. The foreclosure date is generally April 1st. So they have to make that filing by July 1st. The purpose of that occurring before the rest of the process is to give us flexibility about how we proceed with the process. If there's nobody who cares about increasing the price through the auction, there's no reason for the treasurer to do that and to submit them to auction. And so we're able to make that property available through a couple of processes to the city if the city wants it. And in some cities that is an issue because the city does itself buy and develop vacant property. But in the atmosphere in Lansing, it allows us to make property available to nonprofit developers like Capital Area Housing Partnership, Eastside Community Action, Nation Outside. Those were among the groups that we allowed to look at property that had been foreclosed before the auction to see if they were interested. The actual mechanism is that the land bank purchases the property. The land bank is a local unit that has the ability to do that, but then it's immediately sold to to that other organization. This year is the first year we've been able to freely use that because of the legal challenges to the process that were established after the different court decisions has smoothed out. The courts have firmly said that the process that the Michigan legislature created is constitutional. It's not only constitutional, it's being imitated by other states around the nation. Well done. And so 2 of the 35 properties in the city ended up with Eastside Community Action. They're in Potter Walsh neighborhood. They're houses that are undergoing rehab now, and they did not go through the auction. Did not do something that increased the cost to Eastside or anybody else by pulling them out of the auction. In whole, the 35 parcels in Lansing, 19 are residential structures in various stages of decay. 1 is a small commercial building with an adjacent vacant lot on Jolly Road near Cedar. And then there are 14 additional vacant residential lots that were not next door to something else. So 2 of those 19 residential structures went to ECAC, the rest the auction process. What's left after 2 rounds of auction now are 1 structure, which the land bank and treasurer's office looked at early on and determined, although the city does not have a demolition order on it, determined that the foundation is in such bad shape that it should be demolished, and 5 other vacant lots. We've actually got a commitment from the state for the funds to demolish the 1 structure, which is on MLK, a couple of houses down from Willow. So the next step in the process is one that by law, the city gets all 6 of these properties unless they're rejected by the city. And so it's necessary for the city to take affirmative action to reject the properties so that they go in the next stage to the land bank for the land bank to deal with. In the one case, getting the demolition done. In the other cases, figuring out ways to market the vacant lots to developers who can, with all the taxes cleared, and find a way to build housing units on them. All of them at one time or another had houses on them. There are probably reasons why nobody at the auction wanted to take a chance on them right away, but if the land bank has them, we can continue to market them with the other property land bank has. So that's how the process works. It's now to the city council to affirmatively reject them, and that's the last stage before they go to the land. I'll only add that today's City Pulse has the annual publication of parcels in danger of foreclosure in 2025. Always do urge everybody to look through that and help anybody out who may be at risk. Coming year, we've got lots of resources available. Great determination to keep particularly owner-occupied property out of foreclosure. I looked today, one of our foreclosure prevention programs that the county is funding with matching funds. We today made payments on 12 properties, not all of them in the city, but 12 properties where homeowners are working with the county to clear up the past taxes and stay in their homes. Happy to take any questions, and obviously urge a yes vote on rejecting these properties.
Right, we appreciate the thorough presentation. Councilman Brown.
Thank you again for coming in the thorough presentation. No further questions. Thank you.
And I'm sorry. So the 6 properties on this list, you said there is 1 with a structure.
Yes.
That's going to be demoed, and then 5 of them are vacant.
5 of them are already vacant. The 1210 North MLK is the second or third property north of Willow. So it's
Yeah.
not right next to the Chinese restaurant, but two structures up from it.
Pulled it up on maps. That's
I
I was just making sure.
Yeah, we went through that and it really ought to be demolished. We did have one potential auction buyer who at the auction said he didn't think it needed to be demoed. We gave him a special opportunity to look through it thoroughly and waited for an offer or further communication, didn't get that. So we're going to go ahead and do demolition, not using state flood elimination.
Certainly appreciate it. Anything to add? Yep.
Just add for the record that ED&P did receive this list from Alan's staff, and as we do annually, we do review it just to see if there's property adjacent to something that the city may be actively involved in, to Alan's point, to make a decision. But certainly we've many years of a positive relationship with the land bank, and so we've reviewed it. There's no desire or need at the moment of those 6 properties to be in city control, and both department and mayor's support to have these reverted and put into land bank control. So actually, the main reason for why the land bank exists.
Right. Won't get it. So Councilman Brown, we are in a position to entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion.
There's a motion on the floor. This is in support of the resolution to object to all 6 of these foreclosed properties. Further discussion. Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Appreciate you. Absolutely.
Get on to my next meeting. Look forward to seeing how you put forward this other proposal that has
We'll talk.
interest.
Will this be on Monday's agenda? Would you
Yes.
for him to be
It is.
present to maybe give the same?
You know what? I mean, I think it's an opportunity for you to educate. I mean, if you want to be, I certainly could run through it if
I'm
you'd like
going to
to.
do my best to be there. I've got 3 or 4 different meetings.
Let's do
that
that.
I'm-
If you could be
that-
here,
that
we'll make space.
I'm bouncing back and forth among.
If you can be here, we'll make space for you. If not, I got it. Okay. All right. Certainly appreciate it.
I'm planning to do that. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Kaczynski, if we could get you up to the table. Okay. Is this Andy? All right. So we are looking at potential purchase of property at 927 South Grand Avenue. This would be in addition to River Point Park in the Rio Town neighborhood. So Andy, go ahead.
You just basically summed it up. This is an opportunity to take on a parcel that was demolished or the house that was demolished in 2021 has been vacant since, and this is an opportunity to add it to River Point Park. Generally, I advise against taking development parcels off of the rolls, but in this case, this is quite deep into the floodplain, and it is a bit on the small side. And to support the priority of Parks and Recreation to acquire riverfront and river adjacent land, we were supportive. Planning Commission voted unanimously to recommend approval as well. The agreed, and I will add, usually you don't get agency responses, but in this case, the Lansing Fire Department was supportive.
Right.
As it would increase access to the trail and the river, as they do rescues or what have you. The agreed upon purchase price is $1 plus closing costs. You probably did notice that this was done in 2022. It got a little lost in the shuffle, and then we were reminded that it hadn't gone through, so
Right.
that's why we're getting it back in front of you.
Okay. All right. Councilman Brown.
Thank you for the explanation. Makes sense. Any further questions?
So in terms of, Andy, real quick, so I was looking at the staff report, and it looks like one of the positive recommendations, I think, was from Public Services, that there would be less road to maintain. So is this right here, is this road? Is that what they're talking about? Oh,
So yeah, you did have, so you notice that the address is Grand,
right.
and it would be north of that road there. So yes,
Okay.
Public Service would have had to clear road for that. Public Service would have had to back their vehicle down for any recycling, any trash in that area. So you had a dead end there
Okay.
with one residence, and that had to be maintained. So definitely less maintenance for Public Service because they no longer have to go north of the intersection there.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. And then lastly, is there a reason, Andy, we didn't, in this resolution, in the, I think it's the last whereas before we get to now therefore be resolved, is there a reason we don't recognize the fact that the park board, I mean, we did do it up here, right? But then it says, whereas the Committee on Development Planning, Matters, they said 11th board recommendation of the planning board. Is there a reason why we don't say planning board and parks board there? And I know in a couple of, it talks about the parks board reviewing it. But I just want to acknowledge that we care what the parks board has to say.
That was my last.
Okay. Right.
Probably an oversight on my part. So
Okay.
if it's agreeable to OCA, we can include that in the final.
Yeah, I think we should, right?
There's no objection from OCA
Yeah,
if
okay.
you want to make that
So
amendment.
if you don't mind.
I'll make a
It does
motion.
say,
Oh, did I miss it?
it does say two whereas above, April 13th, 2022, Parks Board review proposal voting.
Which is fantastic. I want them to read this and say, hey, they actually considered our vote because absolutely that matters to us. Yeah. Okay.
Make a motion for the amended resolution.
All right. So there is a motion on the floor to support the resolution with the amendment to add Parks Board to the last whereas. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none. All in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And then as it pertains to the agenda, I am going to, because D and E are companion in some fashion, I'm going to take just a little privilege in addressing E first, if that's okay. And the reason is that for council, or I should say for the council, or the committee, sorry, there is an amendment in our packet that I would like to propose to the, yes.
I know,
Well, the
but
first is as it was presented to the committee. This one is the one with the amendment. And
You need
it's-
copy of it?
Yep, and on the second page, starting on line 4, there's an amendment. And I'll read it so that everybody. Yes.
Item B.
One is probably in form.
What did we do? Oh, I'm sorry. First of all,
Attendance for on item B.
I don't think so. I mean, no. And yeah, Brett, I want to bring that to good. I'm sorry, first E was tabled in the last item, so to talk about it, we would have another table. So we can move to the Item E.
Okay.
We'll talk about it as soon as, yeah, oh yeah.
Okay, so I'd like to untable item E for discussion.
All right, there's a motion on the floor for the discussions, and hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, it's on the table. Okay, so, yeah, I think you just had it.
Okay, that's.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
That's why I'm looking at them both.
So we did have discussion, as referenced earlier by a representative with the AARP on this home ownership piece. I've looked at a lot of ordinances from a lot of communities. Frankly, a lot of communities add the ownership interest piece. Grand Rapids is an example I've referenced here a number of times. Even Clinton County, they have something on the books now, a policy where not only ownership interest, but also they even go further with there's got to be a medical hardship, and the list goes on. But in any event, I think the spirit of the ADU piece is to make sure that, at least the way it's been presented to us, and the way that most communities have attacked this, is it really is an opportunity for people to age in place with grace. And so we want to make sure that we have something on the books that allows for that. But I also agree with other communities that have said we really want that grace aspect. We want to make sure that this is really for that, and that it's done in the right way, right? And so the language I'm proposing is, it starts at number 4. And it simply says for any lot, and we did do some of the feedback from our representative from the AARP, for any lot, the principal structure or the ADU shall be owner occupied. If either the ADU or the principal structure is leased, it must be registered and properly licensed and run by the code compliant office. And so what I'm essentially asking is first of all, for support of this particular amendment. Law did take a look at this to determine whether or not this was substantial enough to send back to the planning commission. They said, yes, it is. And then I would assume coming back to council, we would have to have another public hearing. Or no?
Yes.
So we'd have to have another public hearing.
I'm sorry, another public hearing.
You should. It should go all the way back through.
Yeah.
Okay.
So and for anybody in here that wanted us to rush through this, I just want to remind folks, I know on council, a lot of times committees become this rubber stamp things. And let's get it through as fast as we can. But I want to remind folks that most legislative bodies and committee, there's actual work done. And there's actual questions, and the hope is that you can evolve things in committee before it actually goes out before the full body for a vote. And so that's that's what I'm asking. The one question I have for you, Ms. Hagan, is does that need to be, does it need to be an official motion? Is it consensus?
Are you talking about the
In
amendment?
terms of just, yep, we're comfortable with this and send it back.
Adopt, that
Yes.
would be via a motion to
So to
adopt
move
the
to adopt.
amendment, and then, yes.
So I guess I'm going to pass the gavel. I'm going to ask to be recognized.
I accept the gavel and I recognize you.
All right. So what I would like to do is move for the adoption of the amendment to add the homeownership interest as outlined on page 2.
Accept that for discussion, so discussion. I do appreciate the work that you've done, of course, the dialogue that we've had in committee amongst, members. And I do understand exactly the language that's been put forward, but working with the actual draft amendment of the form-based code, I had the opportunity to meet briefly with the EDP staff, and it led to questions such as this about owner occupancy. And so if we have, for example, with the cottage courts, that owner occupied or not, if we have with the boarding house as well as the rooming houses in the different languages, would we, if there's missing language like this, in that wouldn't we want to be uniform and adding the same language?
I think the goal, for me, the goals of the different housing types are different, right? And so with this, the ADU can only be as part of a single family dwelling, right? Yeah, in certain zones. And so the idea behind, as a matter of fact, one of our advocates here often calls these granny flats. The idea is that, again, with these ADUs, folks are able to age in with grace. And whether that be they're moving to with family member as an example, but they want to maintain some measure of independence, or if it's they're moving a caregiver out of their, whatever it might be, right? That's I think that's the spirit and the intent of this piece. Whereas I think a lot of the change that is reflected in our item D is not necessarily, I mean, that's not the goal. That's not the objective.
So what is that? We didn't have an opportunity. Can I ask them a question at this time? Is what is the difference? Because for me, and I went and saw the cottage courts too, which is a parcel with many different units. It's pretty much the same as an ADU. What would be?
If the dwelling unit itself is owner occupied, it doesn't have to be registered. Whether it's on its parcel with other units or whether it's on its own parcel, it doesn't have to be registered. If it's being rented out, it does. That's the end of the day. So cottage court, most of those, if not all of them, I believe are owner occupied. And some of those, that's not all one parcel. There are a couple, 2 or 3 parcels that make up cottage court, and the ones that are occupied do not have to be registered.
And then, did you want to add?
Meaning the developer sold those after.
Right.
And so if the intention of Dave is to maintain ownership on any of them, then it'd be subject to a rental registry.
Is that what you're asking and trying to get after, or no?
So could an individual have a parcel and either do an ADU or a cottage court and live in the main house?
Cottage courts and ADUs are 2 different definitions.
Right, so that's what I'm
So
saying.
in this case, no, on your, my home, right? If I had enough room in my backyard, I would only be permitted to add an ADU if this passes. I would not be able to add a cottage property under the cottage court definition.
Why not if you added 3 or 4 units or 3 or 4 properties?
Based on, one is based on the definitions and how we set this up, and part of it is different sizing requirement, different setback requirement, different population served. And so why we went with the ADU definitions, because it's limited space in a backyard versus what we're allowing in cottage court development to perhaps could create.
No, that's exactly right. Well, it's property, your property, your property. They're not going to be big enough. They're not going to be able to qualify for it.
Okay.
Okay.
So is there a owner occupancy requirement for a cottage?
No.
Developer would either have to sell, which inherently could then naturally make them owner occupied, or if they're keeping them in their portfolio, they would register them as rentals.
So it's more like a development style versus, like you said, granting flat age in place.
In different, again, a cottage report can be, it's different sizing requirements, so forth, than what we're proposing in accessory dwelling. These are potentially smaller, because of their backyard.
Thank you.
So,
So I guess we're for both, all in favor?
aye.
Aye.
All right, so that passes.
Pass the gavel back.
Yeah, go ahead.
You gavel back.
Does the motion that was just made here have to go to council and then full council refers it to the planning board, or is that done right? As of right now, it goes back to the planning.
My understanding
Mine too.
is that because this is an amendment that is made here at committee and it's substantial in the way that the land is used, the committee has made such an amendment, it goes back to planning commission from here.
Okay. That's fine.
That's the way I understand it.
And then to follow up with that, then it would go through that process and come back.
It would come back essentially as a new referral to council once planning, the staff does their report, they present it, they have a public hearing at planning commission, and it would show up again on your council agenda, I think even as a new referral,
Okay.
is the way it makes sense in my
And
mind.
then it would be referred back to this committee.
It would, for us to introduce instead of public hearing, then we'd have a public hearing on the home ownership aspect. And you might have people come in support of that, and you might have some people come and say, you know what? That won't work for us in our situation.
And potentially
Right.
we could do another amendment.
Yeah, and I think at that point, of course, I would defer to law. But if the committee saw fit to strike that, I don't think, because it's been referred, I don't think that would be something that would activate the entire process. So, but I don't want to speak for law. They would have to have a conversation.
I would need to look into that and get back to you.
Right.
Good answer, thank you.
Just based on some answers I've gotten on other similar things in the past, but I could totally be wrong. That's why you're here, and that's why we appreciate you.
Yep, thank you so much.
All right. Yeah. So, very, very quickly, Joan, before we go on our next item.
So does
Yeah.
that mean that E will go back to begin the process again with the ownership?
Yes.
But D?
We're going to untable that and discuss that.
Oh, got it.
All right. All right. So that we can talk about D, we need a motion on table.
Motion to untable item D.
All right. There's a motion on the floor for the discussion. Seeing and hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. All right, that is untabled, and we kind of know where we're at and why. Essentially, we tabled that. There was some conversation about, these two obviously going together. But then the other piece was that we had actually asked council staff to get with planning staff and make sure that the door was open and that folks knew the door was open to actually, in fact, engage and try to digest what is, a sizable amendment. To truly understand what it is that we're doing, and have the ability to then go out and really, I think, empower the community to provide some measure of productive, feedback for us. No offense, but that way we're passing something the majority of the community supports, and not just a very vocal minority. And so in any event, I think some of that work has happened. I know, as an example, you sat down. So I'm going to turn the floor over. If you have any comments regarding that process or any questions with regard to this, we're all ears.
Yep, no, it was an opportunity to me. Thank you for, reinvesting and working to get that door open for everybody. So we had the opportunity, I had the opportunity to meet with EDP staff and the director, given an hour. We had one initial meeting, we had another hour meeting. And, being able to go through, we only were able to go through about 10% of the changes. And it was very good dialogue, and I really appreciate it. It did open up more questions, as well as, as you indicated, to really get back with constituents. Some of the changes here, we talked about
on page 6, they provided all of the changes.
So you're talking about that document?
Yeah, so it would be page 6, I believe it would be your documents page.
This is just a summary.
No, I know, but you, so you're, but in mind.
Yes.
Page 6. Got it.
For example, with boarding houses, in having further dialogue in, just the way that I was raised and a lot of people in Lansing, you hear boarding house, you think, okay, that's housing in the community for someone who wants to take people in, for whatever their passion is. But this definition is described as lodge for extended periods of time, shared with common areas, bathrooms, lounge room services such as meals and laundry may be offered or may not be offered. Staff could or could not be on. So when we began to speak about this together, it was indicated that this is only eligible in a commercial district. So now my definition and what I believe a lot of constituents have thought is a boarding house would not be something that would be in a commercial district. So really this is probably more like a bed and breakfast or an Airbnb, those type of things. And so these are, as we have this rich dialogue and opportunity to further, talk about these, then it draws questions or comments. Is this something we want to have in our commercial districts or not? When asked, which Andy was very thorough and very open, I said, well, when you're talking about extended periods of time, how long is the extended period of time? They said that that's not regulated or there's no definition. So you could be there for 5 days or you could not. So what are we kind of creating with boarding houses in our commercial district versus, in the mindset when I read this initially, that is thinking of having housing in the community, people are staying there. And then what they've done is created on page 26, rooming house, which that would be more of what people consider as a boarding. Additionally, if we look at page, I believe page page 14, we have different changes, which
So what page?
Page 14. And it talks about stoops. A stoop is a small elevated landing space above the sidewalk which provides entry into the building. Stoops must be covered versus may be covered or uncovered, and may project beyond the building subset in line towards the right of way. So they were talking about having this with housing and, if you're building new and conform in the city. And I said, well, why is that proposed change, whether you do or don't? And they said, well, it's a design and it's the preference they feel looks better. But that's not, that's people's personal property, personal house. And why would you have to have it now covered? So these are changes I would like to further discuss with the community, because there's nothing like this as a safety issue or a hazard or those type of things. So a lot of different good questions came up. There's a new on page 8 about campgrounds and now having definition, but when you have a campground, it becomes subject to state regulation. And the campground definition includes tents and things of that sort. But there's no language or understanding about, our homeless population and a house who like to live in tents, someone who is their preference. So really not, having to go further. And I would like to talk to HRCS about that and different, stakeholders, because if we create a campground that's now state regulated and someone has a tent, how is that affecting, what we're currently able to do in flexibility, or even some private owners, they let, homeless they believe in supporting have encampments. So is this something that's affected? And those type of things. We also talked about consumer goods delivery, which is a new system called, and you said
Companies like GoPuff.
GoPuff, and I didn't know anything about it. And so I think those are good things to have language in there. But what they're saying on page 10, consumer good delivery is businesses where it's like Riley explained so well, it's like a retail grocery store, but you can't access it as a customer, but they have delivery. So not having them to be able to be in retail areas is what I understand. And that makes sense from their vantage point. But then as I begin to think about it, and we had a short period of time, is there a district or is this something we can be flexible? I haven't talked to any business owners about their thoughts. The justification or reasoning that EDP brought was the fact that they have a line of cars like picking up orders.
Right.
So, I haven't seen any, I don't know where these are currently located in Lansing or how it's affecting it. So would like to further investigate that as well. And I've talked to a couple other council colleagues after they've had the opportunity to meet, and they're looking through these significant changes as well.
And because you only got through 10% of this, did you guys set up an additional timing meter?
We did not have the opportunity. They were talking about trying to, we're in hopes that we would just move this forward today. But I feel like this is great. And if we can keep this going, then I can flush through this and make sure my heartbeat is to make sure that I'm connected with community and getting input and feedback and researching things directly myself as well.
So is there an action? Is there a motion?
I guess I would look to table this again and revisit it once I'm able to meet with them and actually go through all of the changes, and then be able to do a little bit of due diligence, and then I would be ready for myself to be able to make different decisions. But I definitely want to get through all of this, and it was phenomenal. So I really appreciate the hour that I was given thus far.
And you, Andy, you guys you've met now with Councilman Brown.
We met with Councilman Brown. We tried to do last week. We didn't really, took about 55 minutes to get to this, which is what we thought the meeting was going to be about.
Okay.
We showed up for a meeting, we weren't able to meet with you until 20 minutes later. And so I know we've got time. I don't know how long you guys, I'd love to keep going through, because in our world, these have been recommendations we brought almost now 2 years ago. It's gone through planning commission 3 times. It's been with this committee for So I'd love to figure out a way. We've offered multiple times to meet. I know calendars can sometimes be tricky, but we've met with Councilmember Carter, with Trini. We've tried to meet with Councilmember Spatafor. He's been sick, but he's indicated he no longer needs to meet. He's read it himself. He's reviewed the summary doc. That satisfied him. We've offered it to everybody else. We haven't heard. Councilmember Cost is good. We haven't heard from Councilmember Jackson. Councilmember Garza hasn't replied. And I didn't know if you needed to meet her.
No, I've read through it a number of times. Yeah. Would I like to take another look? I would. Sure. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Sure.
Again, this is substantial.
It
I get that you went through that whole process, planning commission 3 times. That's fantastic. But again, I really believe in the work that committee does, and I don't want to push anything out. I think there's value to the motion if folks need more time to digest this. And I don't necessarily think now's the time to go through 269 pages of. I just really don't.
As much as we can. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, let's do this. Let's do this because there is a motion on the floor, and I want to make sure that we consider that motion. And I think there's just a difference in terms of what we think the work should look like and what we're comfortable with. And I think I'm hearing Mr. Brown that he needs some more time to personally dive into this, think of questions, right? Because he even said in his explanation that as I sat there with the information for a while, questions started to sprout, right? So I don't think we're going to get Raleigh, frankly, to a point where we're comfortable today. So there is a motion on the floor. We are going to consider that motion. Is there any further discussion? All right. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes. All right. So what we will do is this will be taken up at the next Development and Planning Committee, which is
Next year. We don't know yet. Yes.
All right.
Before bringing it back.
And it may be an entirely different committee, and maybe they won't have the same issues.
If I am on the committee, though,
Right.
I would like to wait to bring it back to make sure that I can get these questions that I've already asked answered. So I don't have to say, oh, I got through 30 more pages and then table it again. So I would like to make sure I have the opportunity.
When I say, well, because we don't know what the committee looks like, what they would do is design for themselves, right? What they want to do as a committee, and if they do in fact push it out, and some of these things aren't satisfied, obviously that conversation would be then had with the bigger body.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
But I know what you guys are hearing. I don't know. I'm hearing that there are still some concerns. I'm hearing that there are plenty of questions. And maybe I don't know why we're hearing different things.
Right, and I don't want to certainly, I've never put myself in a position where I speak for another member of the council, but the general consensus we've gotten is that we believe there's a majority that want to see this at full council. To see it pass. We've got some pending development requests that are one of the big things me personally that's exciting about this is with regard to single family lots. Currently, the traditional lot size in city Lansing is 33 feet. It's currently under the current ordinance. It's impossible to build a new home. We've got folks like Habitat for Humanity, Ingham County Land Bank, Capital Area Housing Partnership. If you adopt the change within here, that would allow them to go forward. We have federal funding that's aside for that. And so,
and I get, Raleigh, I understand where you come from, and I understand your background, and I think it's phenomenal. But I also think we have to think about this, not just from that lens, right? Yeah. And so I know that for groups like CAP and for Habitat, for Humanity, and it makes a lot of sense. I actually talked to Mr. Schertzing on the phone about some of my concerns that, and I think he even said, hey, there's value to this concern, so there are other concerns that I think we all have lived experience, we all have professional experience, we all have, and I think we're all coming to the table with some of those concerns. The other piece is, since it was referenced earlier, I'll talk about it. I am concerned, and I don't think it's your fault. I think you're working to remedy. I am also concerned about kicking the door open right now in terms of the, and what is the capacity of development planning right now? I've heard a lot of, we're getting there. The other piece is, I've heard a lot about other communities and what they've done and the caps that they've lifted, and so much of what they've done, because I have studied this, so much of what other communities have done is they have slow rolled this on purpose. So because you don't know what you don't know, you really don't understand in terms of what, we can say that every other community, this is what they've experienced when they've done. But first of all, every community I've looked at has done it a little bit differently than this. And they have done it incrementally, and they have actually manufactured the incremental growth, right? This might end up in incremental growth, and it might end up in explosionary growth. We don't know, because this is really somewhat unprecedented in terms of what we're trying to do on that first. So if we're going to pass this, I at least want, right, or I should say have a vote on this in front of that body, I at least want folks to be very, very well versed in what this is. I want to make sure that the committee is comfortable in putting this through. With all due respect, they haven't been working on this for eons and eons and eons, right? As an example, with the special interest group. But I do have concerns. Sure, I do. And nobody's been able to do those. Not a person that's called me, not a person that I've sat down with.
And I do understand.
Yeah. But I get the value in a lot of this.
It would help me, both as department director,
right,
speaking for staff as well. Any of those concerns that you either want to put in writing, send our way.
Yeah.
I don't know what your concerns are.
Well, and how about this? How about we meet, not so I can better understand this, but so I can share my concerns?
That'd be great.
Sure. We can do that.
That's been a request.
You are one person I haven't said no.
I'd love to know, trying to push
But
this.
before we get into that, what I want to say as a councilman, I've been trying to meet for the last year and have not had the opportunity. So when we're saying all of these stakeholders, I've only been given the privilege for 2 hours worth of time. So if it has been 2 years, I understand. I'm supportive of all opportunity for us to have more housing in a more diverse way, to be more inclusive and more empowered for our city. And I love it. I'm from here. I'm excited about it. But I also have to do my due diligence as a representative who echoes and amplifies the will of the people. So as a department or whoever the staff is, I haven't had 2 years. I've had 2 hours.
And let me amplify that. What I want people to understand, because I know the narrative out there, right, with certain people in certain groups, in terms of certain people on council on council and perceived motivation and tension. I want to be very clear here. And you know the work I do. Susan knows the work I do. Andy knows the work I do. You know where I live. You know where I decided to stay to try to help people ascend from within, right? I'm not trying to help people. I don't have a hand back from some other community. You know where I'm at, right? I also believe in densification. I also believe in housing options. I also believe in, but what I want to be very careful about is that we don't have unintended consequences. Because I'm going to tell you right now, right? Because I'm at these properties every single day. As a matter of fact, I was at 2 of them yesterday, right? That we don't exacerbate a problem that we have right now, where we all mean well, we're all well intended when we pass these policies, but we don't critically think our way through what could potentially, in an unintended way, occur. And then here we are with people that are incredibly vulnerable, and we're exacerbating their issue. Because maybe we don't have the capacity within development and planning to make sure, right, that those places are up to code and that those are good, safe spaces for them to live. hierarchy of needs, there's nothing more important than somebody's housing, right? Their medical needs and their education. And so that's just one piece, but there's a whole lot that I'm concerned about. Because right now, if you go through the city of Lansing and you get onto our rental properties, particularly multifamily, and frankly, we're at the point where it's single family too, we're in trouble. And for anybody to sit in this room and say, you're kidding yourselves. Mr. Brown has been in these rentals, I've been in these rentals, we are in deep trouble. Right? And that means that our constituents are in deep trouble. And we're not. I was just on the phone, and you know this because I'm texting you, right? With folks over on a property that because of failures of the city of Lansing and either a lack of systems or systems not being implemented or an issue with capacity are living in an absolute humanitarian crisis type situation. And frankly, I think that's getting some attention because of the sheer size of the property, but we have those types of things all across the city of Lansing. And so I'm going to continue to look at this, but also I'm a little worried about the fact that we're just kicking the door open and we really don't know what we don't know. It's a little worrisome, and we can talk offline, of course. Okay. All right, seeing no other business before the body?
I just want to add this to the record of what I'm indicating, which is our emails, and we can pass that.
Oh, okay.
These are the schedules, and I really appreciate your time. It's been very powerful. But as written on December 3rd at 3:00, Mr. Councilman Brown, hope you enjoyed your Thanksgiving. As a follow-up from our last meeting, below are the times we are free to meet to review the edits for our Second Amendment. And then you have several different times. And then it says, let us know if you have any times during the above to meet for 1 hour. So I understand if everyone has to meet according to this policy. My response was, thank you, and as indicated, I have read the entire amendment prior to convening our initial meeting. As we spoke, I have had several questions and asked for an explanation of all changes and justifications as a result of the additional questions that arose. I felt more time would be needed, but I'm greatly appreciative of what you feel is enough. Thank you for encouraging me to reread the proposed changes. However, my reading is not in question. It is your department's explanation that, again, I have requested because all changes have not been explained to me. I take my role as an elected representative of all Lansing constituency, and several concerns have been brought to my attention and others. Yours truly, DJV. You said thank you. If you have constituent concerns regarding this member, help send them to me ahead of time so we can prepare. Otherwise, see you next week. So with these limited times and being saying we've had 2 years, I haven't had 2 years. I've indicated the last meeting that I need time to push through this, and it has been a very productive. I really appreciate it, Raleigh, as well as Andy. But that's what I need to move through all of these documents. So I just want to make sure that that's as stated.
And I apologize. I think I misstood your time on the committee and our time presenting at this committee as additional information. So I apologize.
Well, the last meeting,
the other
you were in
council
my
members
office, yeah.
who I've met with, an hour did suffice for them. I certainly won't compare you to others. I just assumed as a member of the DP.
Well, if we want to
you got a
speak,
little bit more
if we
back.
want to speak clearly, the other council people, I believe you were speaking about ADUs, and I'm consistently talking about the entire code. And so that's when I've talked to other colleagues, they've said that you guys have talked more about ADUs than the form-based, but each of us represent the people I'm actually voting for. So it's important that myself as an individual council member, I'm saying I really need to have all of these amendments, which are all in yellow, it's all of these pages. So I need to understand where we came up with them, if we look at all of them. So all of these pages, so for example,
Going back in time, I would have done our presentations line by line like that.
But for
We'll
example,
address in the new year.
so for example, as I'm trying to talk in my committee, that astute in changing whether someone can have a covered or not covered, it's like, well, where is that coming from? Because some people don't want that. So you guys were able to explain that it's a design preference. Okay, well, thank you. Now that's noted. So now I can go back to constituents and do my job and say, hey, what do you think about this? Because the justification behind it is a design factor. So I read it, but the question is why? So that's all I'm trying to get. So I really appreciate it because I want to be able to be supportive of this for our community and all the stakeholders that you described.
Sure. We understand. That's an example. Already doesn't get an answer now. Perfect. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
No,
And
I
thank you
appreciate
all.
you. Thank you.
Wait, 4:30.
Oh, I thought you did. Well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's why I figured you
Not today.
Are you, do you still have your original?
So I need
or-
two things. I need somehow,